Alright, hello everybody. This is a quick overview of our first Blender product, which is called Cloud Painter. You can edit through the asset browser or open the Blender file that we provided. If we open the file, we are greeted with a simple setup. On the right, you will see two objects. The curve, which is used to draw the clouds based on geometry nodes, as well as a volume empty, which converts our mesh to a volume or the clouds. To get a better look at how it works, let's open a second 3D editor and switch it to rendered preview. We use Cycles for this, but you can also use Eevee, but we prefer Cycles, of course. Let's first take a look at the volume empty and check the settings. Firstly, we have the mesh to volume modifier. This converts our mesh to a volume. Below that, we have two displacement modifiers. These create more detail and depth for our volume. Firstly, the density and the interior bandwidth can be left alone. We will control the density through the material. The voxel amount defines the overall resolution of our volume. You can increase it to get more details or keep it lower to have faster render times. Be careful to not add too much because it can be quite hard on your computer. The first displacement modifier adds more broad deformations, while the second one creates kind of like smaller, more detailed displacements. The strength of these modifiers is controlled to influence how much the volume gets displaced. If we set them both to 0, we can see what they both individually do. If we take the first one, you can see it creates a more big and broader displacement, and if you only select the second one, you can see that this one adds kind of like more fine details. Both of these displacements are controlled by noise texture, which you can find in the texture properties, the little flag on the bottom. If you need to, you can scale the texture as well, but we provided two presets that work in most situations. Let's set both of the displacements of the volume empty back to 0, so we can take a look at the curve and the geonode setup. The basic function is very simple. It lets you draw clouds. So if we select the curve and then go into edit mode, we can select all the curves with A and then delete them with X, so we have a clean slate. Now you can either use the draw tool or the curve pen to create new curves or lines for the clouds. If you set the mode to surface on the top left, you can draw on existing lines to create more layered volumetric clouds. The curve system is, like I said, built on geometry nodes and has already adjustable settings pre-configured for you. If you have some experience with geometry nodes, feel free to modify the setup as you need it, but if you're a beginner, the settings we provided should probably be enough for everything. First, the resolution. This one controls the overall resolution of our mesh. If we drag it left and right, you can see that it increases or decreases the resolution of our mesh. The radius defines how thick our lines will be. It might be good to increase that if you want to create like real big puffy clouds. The displacement 1 is a broad noise-based distortion, which adds more displacement and detail to the clouds. And the second one is a finer displacement, which adds like secondary detail to our mesh. You can also tweak the scale a little bit if you want to have even a bigger displacement or a smaller one. Both the displacements settings, they depend on the overall resolution of our mesh. So if you have more resolution, the displacement will be more detailed and work a little bit better. If we set both of our displacements to 0, we can take a look at the blur setting. If we increase or decrease that, you can see that our mesh kind of like blurs or smooths out a lot. This is more of kind of like an artistic control. Lastly, we have the two settings for animation start and end. These kind of like map the beginning and the end of our curves. You can use these sliders to animate your clouds. If you drag it left and right, you can see that it kind of like drags along the path that we created. And if we want to animate that from like no clouds to clouds forming, there's a little bit of a problem. If we set the slider to 0, you can see that there still is a little bit of the mesh left. There's a very easy workaround for that, and for that we can animate the radius as well. So we are just going to go into the timeline, set a keyframe at around 100 with the value of 1 at the animation end. Then go to the beginning, set it to 0, so we animated the line. And then we can just go somewhere in the middle, add a keyframe for the radius, and then go back to the beginning and add another keyframe, but set the value to 0. So the radius is like very small and also grows with the animation of the start and end settings. Yeah, and if you do that, the clouds will grow smoothly. Alright, then lastly we'll take a look at the material setup. This is very basic. You can just switch to the shader editor to inspect it. Here you have the controls for the density, which defines how thick the cloud is. So if you have a high value, it's going to be a real thick fog. And if you want to have more wispy, very light clouds, you can switch it to 1 or even less. You can also tweak the other settings like the color. You can colorize your cloud if you want to, or also tweak settings like the anisotropy, something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it, but you will get it. Yeah, just feel free to do whatever you want, and that's basically everything. Since this is our first time creating a tool or product for Blender, it still might be a little bit rough. We're still not like experts in that, but it's a very basic kind of tool. So yeah. And also for everyone who buys it, in case we update the tool or do some adjustments or change something, improve the quality, everyone will get free updates who has already bought it. Feel free to comment or leave us a feedback, reach out to us. We would be so happy to hear from you. And also if you have questions about the product or anything else. And yeah, thanks again for watching. See you soon.